got more sparkle for our wrists. I have been loving the trend of multi-strand bracelets that I've been seeing a lot in the magazines and stuff. And so I decided I needed a sparkly multi-strand bracelet. And if I need one, of course, you need one too. So that's what I designed here. And we're going to make this in a couple of different pieces. I decided that I wanted this to fit pretty flush to the bottom of my wrist so that I could wear it like when I'm doing computer work and stuff. I didn't want my clasp area to be too bulky. So what I've done here is I've designed these little end tabs, and they're going to overlap and be closed with snaps. So it'll be very, very secure, and it'll be decorative. We are going to use a multi-drop peyote stitch to do that. It's a 2-drop, 3-drop peyote, but don't be scared, I'm walking you through it. After we've created that, then we're going to create these little right angle weave strips between the two ends. This is the simplest form of right angle weave right here, where when you're doing just a single line of right angle weave, it's 2 beads per side. So that means that this is going to be a beginner friendly project, which is fabulous when you're getting this much bang for your buck. So we'll go ahead and do each one of those. We are going to then add the embellishment on top, which are these little not fire polish. Of course, this much sparkle, it's Swarovski, baby. So we're going to add these Swarovski crystals on top. And then our last step will be then to add that snap closure. Okay, so let's talk about these end bars to start out with. Let's come on down to the bead mat with me. This is one of these end bars that I've already done. And let me show you here. Because I'm using seed beads, it's not necessarily quite as stacked as you might normally have seen it in the past. But let me, I'll use my needle as a pointer here. You can see where our sticky outies here are 2 beads, right along here. And then our down spots, our depressions here, are 3 across. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The reason I did this was for spacing. Let me show you here that I did this originally as a 2-drop peyote, so that there were only 2 beads between each one of these strips. And I didn't feel like it gave enough separation to the strips. I felt like they were kind of just really too stacked up on top of each other. So that's when I decided to go with the 2-drop, 3-drop combo. Plus, I think it makes a really subtle but pretty pattern in your peyote piece back here. The other thing is that because I wanted the strips to start and end on the outside edge, I didn't want, so if we did this as an even count piece, there would be one more section right here of 3 beads that would just be kind of sticking out on the end. And I didn't want that to happen, which means that this is now an odd count peyote piece, which means we've got the funky turn at the end. But again, I'm just going to walk you through it. It's super simple. It's very repetitive, and so it's, don't let that freak you out. It's a good way for you to learn a couple of extra skills while you do this. So the other thing that I just now noticed is that I didn't make this piece, the strip, nearly as long as I made this strip. You can tell that I didn't have this with me when I was doing it. I think that the wider strip actually makes a little more sense. We're going to be adding a couple of snaps. And so that gives you a little more space to kind of add those snaps, where if we added them in here, this is going to be awfully tight right in here to add those snaps in. It could be done. So I'm going to write the instructions with this number of rows. There will be written instructions for this. But if you wanted to shorten your number of rows, you could. You just know that when you go to attach those snaps down, you're going to have to be really precise about the snap placement when you do that. Okay. So let me get this guy out of the way here. Let's make another one of these strips. So when you start it out, remember that you're picking up the beads for your first and your second rows, which means we're picking up the 2s and the 3s. And in this case, because I'm making this 5 strips or 5 strands of embellishment wide, That means we're going to pick up 22 seed beads for our first 2 rows here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Okay, and we'll bring that down so that we've got, you know, a 4 to 6 inch tail left below it, just enough to weave in later. Okay, so we're doing 2 drop, 3 drop. So that means one time across, we're going to be picking up 2 beads and passing through 3 beads. And then when we're reversing direction, we're going to be picking up 3 beads and passing through 2 beads. So don't get too confused. We're going to start out with the twosies. So we're picking up 2. They're going to sit right next to these 2, and we're passing next through the next 3. Oops, and we're not stitching ourselves to the piece. Okay, make sure that those guys stack nicely. So see how we've got this beautiful beginning, 2 and 2, and then we're going through the 3. So we're picking up the next 2, skipping 2 for them to sit next to, passing through the next 3. Where I'm kind of just holding this big line of seed beads in my hand, that's a lot for, I mean, I'm pretty experienced at this, so I can pretty much do it and keep them from falling off the end. But you certainly could add a stop bead, or if you've got one of those little bead springs, you can put the bead spring on there to keep them from falling off the end of your thread, something like that, because I know that not everybody can maneuver quite the way I can. So I'm picking up 2, skipping 2 for them to sit next to, and passing through the next 3. Okay, picking up 2, skipping 2, passing through the next 3. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so here's where we're going to get to our first odd count turnaround. So we've got 2 beads left here, just hanging out on the end, and they're not attached to anything. So we're picking up our 2 that we want to sit next to those 2. Because this is our first odd count turnaround, all we have to do is come in the opposite direction through those 2 beads. Kind of flip them over so that they sit side by side. And now we're just going to work on the opposite side of this piece instead of doing the funky turn. And the only time we get to do that is the very first time we come down to this side. In the future, when we get down to the side, we'll have to do the funky turn. So I'll walk you through it when we get there. So now this, as we're doing the next row, see how our indents are 3 beads wide? So that means we're picking up 3 beads to fit into those spaces. 1, 2, 3, passing through the 2 sticky outies. Picking up 3, passing through the 2 sticky outies. 1, 2, 3, pass through the sticky outies, and 1, 2, and 3, pass through those last 2 sticky outies. All right, flip it. Now we're going back in this direction again. Now our recessed spaces are 2 beads again. So this time we're just picking up the twosies, passing through 3. So you can see where it's pretty obvious what you're doing as you're going along. It sounds more intimidating when I verbally tell you, oops, I'm only picking up 2, passing through 3. Pick up 2. And once we get to the funky end, and the funky end is always going to be where your tail thread is coming out. So I actually like to keep the tail thread on there for a while so that I can remember which end is my funky end. So here we are at the funky ends. We need to add 2 beads here, and there's no sticky outy beads for us to go through to attach them. So here is the official funky turn. We're picking up the 2 beads that need to sit there. We're coming through the 2 next to it back towards yourself. Okay. You're now going to go on the diagonal and come through the 3 on the diagonal towards your non-dominant hand, the one that's holding everything. So we picked these up, came down through here, and then down through another set. That's got my thread coming out right here. So now I want to turn around and go back in this direction again. So I'm just going to pass up through the 3 that are right next to the ones that I just came out of. So passing through those away from myself. I'm going to pass through the 2 beads right below the ones that I added. And now I can finally turn around and come in the proper direction through these 2 that I added. I can do that, flip it, and now I'm ready to add my 3sies all the way up here. So that's going to be the repetitive part that you do every time you come to that end with the tail thread. Now here's the thing. Some people love doing the official turn there on the end, but there are other ways to do the funky turn on the end. I do have a video on multiple ways that you can accomplish that funky end without having to do all that little rigmarole right there. So I will pop a link up for you to accomplish that if you would like to try a different way to do that turn for the odd count peyote. So you're just going to keep adding rows until the number it says in the instructions. Like I said right this second, I haven't counted it because obviously I was wrong when I thought that I knew what the number was. You're going to keep adding rows, and what you want to do is end it so that you have so that you finished with your sticky outies are going to be 3sies. Because on the opposite side, you're going to have the sticky outies that are 2sies, and that's the side that we're going to attach your writing a weave strips to. Okay? Go. And then when we come back, I'll show you how we're going to attach the strands between the 2 ends. So now hopefully you've made your 2 ends. On one of them you can go ahead and end off both your working thread and your tail thread. On the other one you want to leave your working thread attached, assuming that you still have a good segment of thread. If you've got a short one, go ahead and end it and start a brand new one in. Because what you need to make sure is that you've got enough thread to do an entire pass between the 2, and you don't have to. I shouldn't say that. Ideally, you want enough thread to do an entire pass between the 2 ends. However, if you run out of thread midway through, you certainly can add thread there. It's just not ideal. That's all. Okay, so here I am. I'm going to bring you down to the beads here. I've got one end with everything completely ended off. Here is its mirror image, and I've got my working thread attached. I'm going to make a Barbie bracelet, so I'm not worrying too much about my thread length here. And I've got my working thread coming out one of the 2 sticky outies on the end. So these sets of 2sies are where we're going to attach, and we're going to attach between these 2sies. So that's how we need this all oriented. And I'm going to flip this bracelet over so that you can kind of get a good look here of the seed bead unit. So here's the 2 sticky outies, and when I went to go make this first seed bead or right angle weave unit, that means that out of these 8 beads, I already had 2 that are there. So I'm only going to pick up and attach 6 for my first right angle weave unit here. So I'm actually going to just flip this over so it's closest to me. So we're going to pick up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That means our little square has got 2 beads per side. So wall, wall, floor, ceiling. Now I will need to get to the outside wall here to add the next unit, which means I'm going to come across 2 and up 2. Again, these 2 are going to be shared with the next unit. So I'm going to pick up 6 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like so. So this is just super simple right angle weave. And we're going to just keep adding the 6 and coming to the outside edge until we get the length that we want. Here, notice how if I try to do this, this is a really awkward angle for me. So don't be afraid to flip this around to get the angle that you need as you're working. Like so. I'm going to add a couple more units, and then I can show you how it's going to attach on the other side. So attaching there, need to get to the outside edge. So I'm just going to flip it. Pass through 2, pass through 2. There I am on the outside edge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pass it through 2 and pass through 2. Okay. Now let's say this is as long as Barbie's bracelet needs to be. Remember when you're figuring out your length that these 2 strips are going to overlap. So that is only going to be the only additional added length. So when you're figuring yours out, like this obviously doesn't fit me, but if I wanted it to, what I would look at is how many units I need to get those 2 pieces to overlap, okay? So I'm going to say that this is where I want to add one more unit here. So what I'm going to do instead of adding 6 here is, here's one wall here, here's one wall here. We just need to add a ceiling and a floor. So we're going to connect these 2 pieces together. Here's the 2 beads for the top. Then we're going to come down the 2 beads in the other units. in the other swatch here. And I'm even going to just kind of leave this loose so you can see what's going on. Add 2 more for the floor, and then back up through the side. Okay, so there you can see how all of that, as I tighten that, that's all going to come together to be a single unit, like so. Voila. And then that strand is finished. So you're going to kind of figure out your length with that first strand, and then the remaining strands, you're going to do that number of units. So then you just need to navigate to get to where you're going to attach the next strand, which means let's come on over to the peyote section, and then you're going to move through the next 3, so that's the down beads. Move through the next 2 sticky uppies. There we go. Now we're ready to add 6 and start the next strand. So you're going to work back and forth and add all of those strands, counting as you go to make sure that everything's going to work out nice and even. And when you come back, we're going to come back and add all of the embellishment in. Once you've got all the strands done between the 2 bracelets, now we get to have the real fun and embellish with crystals. Now here's the thing, I've got you making all the strands first and then embellishing. If you prefer, you can do a single strand and then work your way back and embellish it at that time, and then do the next strand, embellish it. It's up to you. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. So don't feel like you have to do it my way. If the spirit moves you to do it a different way, that's totally fine. Okay, so here, let's go back to little Barbie bracelet. I decided, because I had my camera guy sitting here waiting on me to create these little strands, I decided to just stop here. So now I am ready to start embellishing. And I've got myself coming out of one of the corners. It does not matter which corner that you are coming out of. And we're going to pick up a size 15 seed bead, a crystal, and another size 15. And we're going to have this sit on the diagonal in this square. So since we're coming out of the top left, we're going to go in on the bottom right through the 2 beads on the side here. So that will have the beads that we just picked up sit on the diagonal across, like so. And then that also, if you'll notice, puts us in the perfect position. Here we are in the top left again. So all we have to do is do this pattern, this zigzag, all the way across. So here we are, coming across on the diagonal, up through those two beads in the middle, like so. Pick up your next your next three beads. So it's a seed bead, crystal, seed bead. Come across on the diagonal, up through the next two, like so, and all the way till you get to the end. And my thread's getting short here, but I'm hoping to get to where I navigate to the next strand, because I want to show you what happens if you end up not in this pattern where you're only having to do one stitch to attach each segment of embellishment, because this is really a fast and efficient way to add that embellishment. And look how beautiful that is. Let me just pat myself on the back for that one. Okay, so now I want to get myself up to the next segment, so I'm just going to pass through the set of three here. Oops, unhook my thread. Pass through the two that is part of that unit. Oh, and see, actually this works out perfectly, because here I am, I'm coming out, this time I'm coming out of the top left. I can do the same thing by now going across on the diagonal here, and then up through those two between units. So my embellishment's going to be here. I'm passing up through these two, like so, and that puts me in the perfect position then to add the next set of embellishment the same exact way. Cross on the diagonal, up through the two in the middle. Now if you end up in a different corner, let's say somehow you got yourself turned around and you ended up over here instead, and now all of a sudden you need to worry about your, oh, you know what? Okay, I know you guys love it when I make mistakes on camera, so I did make a mistake, and let's see if you can spot it. Here's the deal. I've got all of these crystals on the diagonal this way. Look what I did here. I changed the diagonal on it. So this is a good example of what is that I needed to change which corners I was coming out of. So let me pull this back. I knew that shouldn't have worked out. I should have trusted my instincts. I'm like, it's never worked out before. Why would it work out on camera? All right. So what I really want is for this to be on the diagonal this way. And I also want to be coming out down here, because if I do this to here, and then down, and then across and down. So basically my thread is coming up over here, and I really want it to come down out of those two beads. So all I have to do, I've got two options. I can either go around this unit so that it's coming out in between, in this corner right here, or because I came up three and then up two, what I could do instead is just come up those three, so I'm backing out of those two. So here I am in this corner right now, and now I can attach those beads in the proper direction, and now they'll all match up. So there we go. So you just have to kind of analyze, okay, which corner do I want to be coming out of, and get your thread there, and make sure that your crystals are lining up on the same diagonal. Otherwise, I suppose you certainly could use that as a design option. You could reverse or play with the directionality of your crystals. But if you want them all to be in the same direction, you do have to pay attention to which corner you're going when you are attaching them. See, silly Jilly. I make all the mistakes, so you don't have to. So go ahead and add your embellishment, and when we come back, we've got one last step, and that's to add those snaps. Isn't your bracelet super fly fabulous? But I suppose you want to be able to clasp it on your wrist too, so I guess we have to add those darn snaps. Now, if you've seen my videos in the past where I've had to add snaps, I have a love-hate affair with snaps. I really like them as a closure because they're pretty much invisible and they allow us to have your entire wrist encircled by beads, which I really like. The downside is you have to sew these suckers on, and I hate sewing on snaps. So I usually just make sure that I'm in my happy place that day when I need to go do the snaps, and I eliminate distractions, and because I'm notorious for sewing them on wrong. So let me give you all my tips to make sure that you don't screw it up the way I so often have screwed it up in the past. Okay, let's take a look. So we're going to use my beautiful silver sample here to attach the snaps. What we want to do is, I've got a decent length of thread attached on one end here, so I'm going to use that to sew the snaps over here on this side. It doesn't matter which side of the snap you pick, but what you want to do is kind of sit here and mentally go, okay, my thread is on this side, so it's going to close this way. So this side of this piece is where I want to attach the thread. I want to maneuver it so that it's somewhere, you know, you can kind of eyeball where the good snap placement is. You know, you want it somewhere right around, here in these two spots. So I'm going to maneuver my thread somewhere right around that area. And let's see here. So we're coming out here. I'm going to come this direction, looks like. So as you're doing the maneuvering, you're just making sure that you don't have your thread showing anywhere. That is all you're trying to do. Okay, so if I come up here, maybe through one bead here, then let's take a look at how that snap placement would be. Boom. I think that's looking pretty good. So here's one of the things that I want to point out is that this right here, my thread is coming out of this bead right here. I know it's silver on silver, not the ideal choice, but it's one bead of a set of 3. You do not have to use these sets of 3s and sets of 2s when you're attaching your snap. You can just use a single bead of that section when you go to do your reinforcements and when you go to do your attachment points, because it doesn't make sense for, you've got 4 spots in a snap, 1, 2, 3, 4 to tack down, and it's only going to really be the same spacing as maybe a single bead. So don't worry about splitting those up when you are tacking this down. Here's the other thing to remember. This does not have to be pretty. It's all going to be hidden underneath these panels. So there is going to be thread showing across the edge of these snaps. That's normal. It's okay. The other thing to do is, this is something I always try to do because I have sewn the snaps on wrong so many times. Somehow the fact that this side should be up just escaped me for like the first, I don't know, 8-10 years of my career. Now I finally have it figured out, but it's embarrassing to tell you how many times. So I will frequently snap the 2 pieces together and go, okay, so this is how it's supposed to be oriented. Here's my piece, and this is how it's supposed to be oriented. So here I am coming out of a single bead. I'm going to pass it through one of the holes on my snap. For this first one, doesn't matter which hole on my snap. And then I am just going to pass through that same bead again, over and over again. So we're going to reinforce this attachment. Let's see here. Even I'm having trouble seeing with the silver on silver. A really good rule of thumb is to have very strong magnification and strong lighting when you're doing something like this. I'm actually in the situation where I've got so much lighting for the video that I'm actually, sometimes it can be a hindrance. Okay, so here we go. Now once I've got that first one, it'll be easier. Oops, and you know what? I totally attached it to the wrong bead, didn't I? No, that was right. Okay. Phew. Okay, back through the snap hole, through a bead. Snaps are stamped out of metal, and so as such they can sometimes have some rough edges along here, which is one of the reasons why I like to do so much reinforcing and tacking as I am attaching them, because hypothetically, you know, if you've got a rough edge, it could over time saw through some of the thread. But if the more securely you can stitch it down so that it doesn't move around as much, then the less likely you're going to have a problem. All right, so that I think is like my 4th or 5th go around on that particular spot. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to maneuver over to the closest bead to the next hole on the snap. So let's see, we'll come back down the other 2 of this set of 3. And because this is getting tight in here, we may have to just go a single bead at a time when I move this. See, this is why I have to have all my patience to do this. It's a little fiddly. There we go. You also might have to go down a a needle size. I'm using a size 11 tulip needle right now. I would probably be having a slightly easier time of it if I were using a size 12 needle to get through these beads. Okay, so I went down one there. I'm trying to kind of figure out where is going to be the best spot to attach this guy. It looks like it's going to be this bead right down here. So we're going to jog over one column here, come to this one, not through the hole yet. All right, there we go. So now I will come up through that hole and then through the bead and reinforce and reinforce and reinforce. Okay, so I won't make you watch me, but that's basically what you're doing, is it's reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. Then I will move to where it looks like the next bead and the next hole match up, and reinforce, reinforce. So you're doing this on all 4 segments until you feel like it's nice and secure. Then I would move down to this next part over here, attach that same part of the snap down here, and then you'll attach the corresponding pieces on the other side. Again, this is one of those moments where I would kind of stop and go, okay, it's this side that I need to attach it to, so the sparkly side for this other piece of the snap, so that you can make sure that they will match up and fold over perfectly. Okay, so just be really careful and thoughtful as you're doing this, and double check, triple check, quadruple check yourself as you do it. But once you've got the snaps sewn on, you're going to love them. I really, you know, it's better than magnets to me, because magnets with bracelets, sometimes you're picking up silverware and stuff. Toggles are great. The sliding bar clasps are good, but this way, your entire wrist is encircled by beads, and I just think that's so luxurious. I hope you enjoy wearing this as much as I plan on enjoying wearing mine, and let's sparkle together. Happy beading.